So earlier today, I saw a video from Sargon of Akkad, or is it Akkad Daily now? Whatever he's going around calling himself, Carl Benjamin. It was a video about making fun of some people on the Twitters and on the internets in general who are getting all up in a twist over the idea that the presentation of orcs in fiction, and especially within 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, might be construed as being a little racist. And, well, yeah, actually it kind of is, but that's okay, because it's kind of the point. Now, D&D orcs are obviously extremely derivative of Tolkien orcs, and even though they don't quite have the exact same backstory in the various Dungeons & Dragons worlds and in the various iterations of the game itself, it's real easy to draw a line between how Tolkien presented them in his Middle-earth stories and how they're presented in D&D as a game. And along with elves, part of that whole backstory, at least in the Tolkien version, is that orcs are corrupted elves. And whereas that's not necessarily something that's brought up in Dungeons & Dragons, which is not a perfect translation, obviously, of Tolkien's work for a variety of reasons, in large part just because they had to avoid being sued by the Tolkien family. It's the fact that we get halflings instead of hobbits in the game. And whether it was a misunderstanding of it, or they're just purposely to try to spin it into being two different separate things, but in the Tolkien books, goblins and orcs were the same creature, just different names they would go by, kind of a thing. Whereas in D&D, goblins and orcs are very distinctly different types of beings. However, even if in the D&D version they don't have orcs necessarily being like a race of corrupted elves, they do still have orcs capable of breeding with humans, and elves breeding with humans. And I guess this kind of comes to my whole thing of, well, if we're going to be accurate as to how a species is defined, which is if you're capable of breeding with something and having viable offspring that can in turn have children and not just be sterile mules, then they're both members of the same species. And so even in D&D, ignoring, whatever Tolkien-esque echoes they might have in terms of, whatever individual D&D setting world has as their backstory for the orcs and the elves, just down to the basic character mechanics of the fact that you can have half-orc player characters and half-elf player characters, kind of means that orcs, elves, and humans are all the same species, which would mean that kind of by definition, the way they're all kind of portrayed as different from each other is a little racist. The thing is it's alright for it to be racist, because it's trying to teach something. In the process of playing a game about all these different creatures from all these very different variable races all coming together and putting their talents, to the fore and getting over whatever kind of weird racial backgrounds they might have, where the elves and the dwarves don't like each other and all that kind of shit. It's a way of teaching the people playing the game about how to achieve interracial harmony. Several years ago, I had a coworker, a younger lady, who her boyfriend had gotten her into Star Trek, and so we ended up talking about Star Trek a bit at work. She's a good deal younger, and she's all kind of brand new to it and has a millennial point of view on it. And, I remember when she first started watching Deep Space Nine and was talking to me about it, and the first time she, brought up the character Kira and just described her as that racist lady, it took me a second to even figure out who the hell she was talking about. And it put me in my head the idea that, Star Trek, yeah, the characters would be described as racist, I guess, especially if you don't understand whatever contextual background Bajorans have with Cardassians. But the thing about Star Trek is that it's using aliens and a science fiction vessel as a way to teach the audience lessons about how humans interact with each other, while at the same time still showing humans as a idealized future version of human society where we've all learned to get along and not give a damn about all of our stupid little superficial characteristics and all that kind of stuff. they can show humanity in its idealized form while still having stories about things that are very relevant to the human condition. They just frame that as alien beings and alien races and alien civilizations. And that's kind of what D&D does. And then there's other things going on, I guess, there in terms of the fantasy genre in general, beyond just Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. But a common thing as to, why does so much science fiction alien races kind of seem to be like exaggerated stereotypical characteristics of a foreign people, and why do fantasy races do that? It's really the only way for people to still tell these kinds of stories. For the vast majority of human history, humans lived in very insular, ethnically supremacist and inward-looking little tribes and clans all around the world. People living relatively close by can be completely alien to you. Different languages, viewed as having like irreconcilable histories. And if one were to write fiction like that set in that kind of a human reality, it would be very obviously screamingly racist and get shot down. However, much like I was saying with Star Trek being able to portray these things in the form of aliens as a way to teach people without necessarily, just having a show that's just nothing about just negative stereotypes about actual human beings. Similarly, you can still have fantasy stories about these big clashes of civilization, but take out the racial overtones by having it be between distinctly different kinds of intelligent life, as opposed to just all being just humans, just with slightly different hairs and slightly different skin tones and slightly different clothing. Instead, some of them got pointy ears, or they're gnomes, or whatever. There's value to be found in telling stories like this. But I guess if your mindset is such that you're kind of just constantly looking for ways that you're being picked upon by society, then yeah, you can choose to go down a mental path that makes you feel like this is all just a great big insult. The idea that orcs are specifically supposed to be black people, it says as much about the person accusing that of being the case as it might say about the person who originally wrote it that way. And I seriously doubt that's really what Tolkien had in mind, especially since the orcs are a corrupted form of elf. So doesn't that mean that elves are also black? Or are elves Asians? Are white people elves and humans Asians? It's a stupid analogy. But essentially, though, I guess, yes, D&D is by definition a racist, classist game, since it's all about character races and character classes. It just is what it is. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative. The whole way we've allowed our society to get to a point where we've turned racism into the penultimate sin. Not to diminish it in any way, shape, or form, but I would think stuff like child rape and theft and murder are still actually technically worse than just racism in and of itself. It's what you do with the racism, I guess, is really more the point. But isn't that true with everything? So, I guess that's really all I have to say about that. It's a shame that here in the midst of this apocalyptic world-changing event, that these are the things that we find ourselves talking about and thinking about. So whatever. I'm not sure whose side I am on this one. Yes, you can make a case about racism in D&D, but so what? That's what it is about. And as I said, it's about people playing characters of very different races, often races that have, deep enmities and bad history between each other, overcoming that to unite together and pool their talents, defeat even greater foes. Now, and also just, yeah, it's all dumb. It's all dumb. So anyway, be sure to hit like and subscribe. Hit like if you think orcs are racist, and hit unlike if you think orcs are super cool. And remember that it's okay to be elven. And, I don't know, human power. Stay waspinated, people.